Shabbat Shalom. I am Rabbi Lauren Werber at Congregation Beth Adam in the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and I am happy to celebrate Shabbat with you. If you are one of our regular members, I'm glad you're joining us, and if you're new, welcome for the first time. We begin with a reflection. Let the Sabbath be a time for believing in what could be and seeing with new eyes. In this serious world, let us take ourselves less seriously. In these harsh times, let us listen for a soothing word. While the world around us unfolds in an instant, let us judge each other a little more slowly. Let the Sabbath shine a light into a corner of ourselves where hope is renewed. Let us remember a reason to be joyful, a way to be gentle. Let the Sabbath be a time for opening up. Let us find strength in our dreams and trust in our strength. Ma yafeh hayom. How beautiful is this day, a day for opening up, for being joyful, for finding strength, for finding hope and trust. Shabbat Shalom, a Sabbath of peace. Night seeps up from the ground. Light falls from the stars, distant, icy, ancient before all who came before. But the light of the Shabbat is warm. The light of the Sabbath is ours. The light of the Sabbath is of this time, of this place, of lives that know the past only in a dream. As we kindle our Sabbath lights, we create a place of warmth. As we kindle these lights, we welcome this time for reflection. As we kindle these lights, we stake our claim. And while these lights burn, this time is ours. Baruch ha'or ba'olam, blessed is the light within the world. Baruch ha'or ba'adam, blessed is the light within each person. Baruch ha'or ba'Shabbat, blessed is the light of Shabbat. As you know, we are still celebrating Passover, which hasn't quite come to its conclusion. I chose this next reflection because of Passover The reading by Bengali poet Rabindranath Tagore speaks of freedom, which is so central to the Passover narrative. Passover, of course, is a remembrance of enslavement, and it's a celebration of freedom, with the primary purpose of keeping our hearts open to the suffering of others. The idea is that we remember so that we can increase freedom and justice in the world. But Passover also challenges us to face the more subtle ways in which we are still enslaved and to free ourselves from those chains. Tagore, in his brief words, recognizes both types of freedom. And certainly without meaning to, he touches on the essence of Shabbat peace. These are his words. Where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free, where the world has not been broken into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come from the depths of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms toward perfection, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way in the arid desert sands of dead habits, where the mind is led forward into ever-widening thought and action, into that paradise of freedom. Let all people awake. May all people awake to freedom and to peace, and may we help to make it so, as Shabbat is a taste of that freedom and that peace. Na'aseh shalom. Let us make peace in the world. Let us make peace for us and all the world.
Na'aseh shalom ma'olam. Na'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. V'maru amen. Na'aseh shalom. Na'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh shalom, na'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh shalom, na'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh shalom, na'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam. Na'aseh shalom, na'aseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam.
Earlier today, I had the chance to bring someone special back as I had a conversation with Rabbi Bar. And we're going to share that conversation this evening as part of our Shabbat experience. He'll be talking about his experience at the Conference for Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Although, as you'll hear, we strayed at the beginning from the conference itself and talked a little bit about church state as well. So here's Rabbi Bar. Hi.
Hey, Shabbat Shalom. Good
Shabbat
to see
Shalom.
you. Good to see you. Good to see you all too, as well. Haven't been here for a bit.
You haven't. And as I said, we get to talk to Rabbi Bar this evening.
Good.
Once in a while, we get to bring you back.
Thank you.
And in part just to see you, but
Thank
also
you. I like seeing you.
because you were away at a conference in DC with Americans United for separation of church and state. I was
Right.
going to shorten it, but
Mm.
I guess we shouldn't.
So again,
and
yeah,
I want to,
Americans United for separation of church and state.
and you're quite active with Americans United,
I am.
and thought you could tell us a little about the conference and about our part to play in this endeavor.
Sure. So let me just talk about the organization a bit, and then we can talk about separation of church and state.
And actually,
Cool.
also, sorry, interrupting you before you even start. For those who are not members of Beth Adam,
Right.
a really short version of how we relate to church state and why this is one of our issues.
Okay. So there's a lot of information. So let's start with that. Let's start with church and state. Church and state is a fundamental American principle. It is an incredibly important principle that has shaped America in profound and significant ways. It comes out of Enlightenment thought, and it is transformative because it says that no religion should be imposed upon people, and people should be free to believe or not believe as the way they want. This was a radical idea when it came into America. When America was founded, and this became part of our Constitution. It's there. We find it in two different places that are important. Bill of Rights, most of us know, Article 1. But there's also embedded in the Constitution itself, there is no religious test to be an officer or a part of our government. Nobody had said that before. It meant that we as Jews, the Jewish community, can be full and equal citizens. It was a remarkably bold idea that hadn't been woven into a government structure before, and we did it here in America. And as a principle, it has been so important for the Jewish community. It has allowed us to function fully and equally. Now, that said, it's not always been perfect. We've had problems. I'm sure some of you who are watching have go, well, wait a second. Maybe while you were growing up, there was still prayer in school, and eventually it was pulled back. So there have been times that religion has been overly woven into our government. And we're also generous in sometimes. So there's a chaplain for Congress, which I would have loved to have been the chaplain. I think that would have been an interesting job. Now, whether there really should be a chaplain for Congress, I really don't think there should, but religion has played a role. We allow before the inauguration of presidents, we have oftentimes invocations and a benediction. So religion has been sort of part of our American experience, but at the core has been this separation of church and state, and people have kept fighting for it for a very long time. And there was a time that there was more success, and we're now living at a time when that separation is eroding. The wall is being eroded, frankly. So that's an idea, and it's been something that's been part of my rabbinic experience for my entire career. I really think it's really important. And think about where religion, sometimes people will say, so same-sex marriage. And there are people who claim same-sex marriage before it became legal. The reason we shouldn't have same-sex marriage is because it's in the Bible. Right? I'm sure you've preached sermons about that before same-sex marriage was legal. But somebody said, because it's in the Bible, that religious belief, that statement that it's in the Bible means it can't be an American principle, even though we have freedom of religion, and that religious thought should have no standing. And frankly, just because it's in the Bible it doesn't mean it should have any standing. That was the same argument around the question of abortion, or more the bigger question of when does life begin, right? Which not only speaks to abortion rights, it speaks to contraception. And people would say we shouldn't allow contraception because their interpretation of the Bible. I don't think the Bible speaks to it clear that way at all, but they say, my religious beliefs say this is the way it's supposed to be.
And that's a good example because Jewish religious beliefs run contrary. So it's not even there's a religious belief and everybody else.
Right.
But once you allow religion to govern, you're choosing what religion governs.
Correct, because religions interpret verses, and it's giving what authority to the Bible. So as a contemporary liberal religion, we don't see the Bible as sacred, that it's not divine writ, it's human beings writing, and they wrote certain things in there, and they wrote about slavery. So slavery is embedded in the Bible. It doesn't mean that we would say, well, slavery's in the Bible, so we should still have slaves. We would actually argue against that, obviously. Women in the Bible are second-class citizens, right? And there are people who want to reimpose that women shouldn't have a voice. I mean, there are actually people right now who are saying that's the 19th Amendment, when women got the right to vote, should be repealed, because if they're married, their husband should really be the one who's making the decision. Gender. Right now we're having in America there's only two genders, and as rabbis, if you study the Talmud, the Talmudic Judaism recognizes what, six or seven?
6 or 8, depending who you ask.
Right. Different genders. So
right.
when religion is used, I mean, people can believe what they want to believe in their own religious faith, but when somebody says my religious faith should dictate how everyone else behaves, that becomes problematic. We saw it. There was the famous the case that out in it was Denver, I believe, where somebody said, I'm not going to make a cake because the couple who came in for the cake is a same-sex couple, and I don't believe that, so I'm not going to serve them. Now, and they claimed religion. Well, what about when people used to claim interracial marriage was wrong? And oftentimes they used religion as the basis. And in America, we said that that's not appropriate. So the struggle between belief and then how it gets reinterpreted into the wise society is a big issue. And church state for me is a significant one for full inclusion as being an American citizen. I always worry about, we used to do, when I was the vice president of the Jewish Community Relations Council in Cincinnati, we did a lot of work with school districts, because beyond the legal status is also the emotional experience of children. If you're a kid, a little kid, and all your friends are doing something religious which you're not supposed to do, so you're a Jewish kid, and all of a sudden the kids are doing a particular prayer, a religious prayer, you feel excluded. And part of a responsibility, I think, of public education, which is, again, an American foundational principle, should be inclusion. And we shouldn't make kids feel less than. Unfortunately, right now, there's a whole conversation in America, again, in certain states particularly, about what's called release time, where kids get to be released from the school day and go off for religious education. What happens to the kids who don't want to go to that church-based school? They're sitting there by themselves.
Or they're going to a church-based school they don't want to go to because they're weighing it against the math class they don't want to go to, right? So they want to be with their friends, so they're being coerced into it in some way as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of that, trying to manipulate and coerce, and also get kids involved very young. So there's, I would recommend to folks, there was a book by Catherine Stewart called The Good News Club, about Christian schools. And as one of my friends, Christian minister, said, that's not my brand of Christianity. I mean, Christians, because it's not Christians versus non-Christians. Even within the Christian community, there's a real wide berth of how people interpret Christianity. And they had to say, not my version of Christianity, but there were these good news clubs where they were in schools and they're trying to get young kids, starting at kindergarten, I think, to stay after school to do that. And they had ice cream and plays, face painting and all that. But it really was an attempt to get these kids into a particular narrow interpretation of Christian experience. And so Catherine Stewart wrote a book called The Good News Club as a function of her child. Catherine Stewart is an investigative reporter. That was her first book. She's written 2 subsequent, been Power Worshippers, and a new book, I think it's called Lies, Money, and God, or God, Lies, and Money. I can't remember the name, the order. It's very good. Those 3, very good book, just recently came out, and actually Catherine was at the conference as well. So,
So you segued us perfectly.
so,
Very quickly,
okay,
it's one of our Beth Adam's
Talk.
social justice initiatives is
Yes.
working with church state as well. So it's woven as it was in your life
right.
for as long as you remember, woven into what we do as a community as well.
So if you want, if you go to bethadam.org, that's our website, and you go to social justice, you have to look around a little bit. There is a whole section, there's a section about climate change, which is one of our initiatives, and the other one is church state. And you can actually find a version of the PowerPoint presentation, the lecture that members of Beth Adam developed and are giving around the country about separation of church and state, both how it came into being in America, how it was being interpreted, and then how it's been, I would say, eviscerated. It's not very good. Some of you might be old enough to remember when President John F. Kennedy, before he ran, he talked about being the first Catholic to be elected president. At that time, he was hoping to. He talked about very clearly about separation of church and state. I don't think our political leaders, certainly many of them, are no longer speaking as clearly and as forcefully as he did in that very famous speech. I think it was at Rice University, if my memory is correct, for the particularly Ministerial Alliance. But look it up, John F. Kennedy's speech about separation of church and state.
I have to look it up.
Oh, so it's great. So it's
really,
very, it's really very powerful. I did, and it was interesting because when Mitt Romney ran, he too gave a talk about how his religion's beliefs wouldn't impact or would impact, but differently. But the difference between the clarity of John F. Kennedy's and what Mitt Romney said speaks, at least to me, to how separation of church and state has been eroded in America. And you could sort of see it in the language. It's a very interesting way to sort of analyze it. So Americans United for Separation of Church and State is an organization that's been fighting for separation of church and state for multiple decades. It's been around for a long time, doing this work and having real successes, and now having real challenges. In fact, we've had the president speak here, has spoke during Zoom, and actually the vice president, who was with another organization, has spoken here as well for adult education. In the last multiple years, I can't remember exactly when, they started a faith advisory council. So called the FAC, which is not the
greatest,
not the greatest title. We're working on it. And I was invited to be on that multiple years ago. And it's a relatively small group, two rabbis and a few ministers of different backgrounds, different faith traditions, someone who nature pagan religion as well, who's done a lot of work, been doing some important, and you can go to the Americans United for Separation of Church and State, and you can see the different folks who are on the Faith Advisory Council there. And we get together and we're a sounding board. We talk about issues that we see coming up. Sometimes we serve as resources. So, different states, what's happening is in different states, different legislatures are promoting different things. And so oftentimes they're Americans United for Separation of Church and State are working with ministers or rabbis in a particular town or a particular state, and they're asking, do you know anybody else we might want to reach out to? If there's a letter that they want to have drafted and they want multiple signatures, they'll say, do you know folks in the state who would be willing to sign on or would look at this? And so that we do that, and also help develop ways to think about responding. So that's what our group is. So I've been going to the conferences. They're in Washington, D.C., and along with the significant speakers talking, or new authors writing, or authors who've written new books, they'll have workshops. There are also lobbying on the Hill is going and advocating for certain legislation that's taking place, which if you've never lobbied on the Hill, I encourage everyone to do that. If you've never had that experience, I know the first time I did it, it was quite nervous. It's like, it was, wow. But I found it really exciting and intriguing to walk the halls where laws are being made and meet with typically staffers. It's very rare that you get to meet with the congressperson, the senator. They're typically, they're pulled in multiple directions, but occasionally you do. And it's important to understand how things our laws are made and being participants in that. So that's where I was. Unfortunately, separation of church and state is being pulled backwards. There are cases, some of you, depending on what state you're in, there's been lots of trying to promote the Ten Commandments. And that says, it isn't a foundational American document. It's much of it is religious that has nothing to do with secular society at all. It is, and different religions count them different, right?
And translate them
and translate them
in meaningful ways.
Yeah, it's not. So which version of the Ten Commandments is that? In fact, some of you may remember there was a judge, I think it was Moore was the judge, and he wanted to have the Ten Commandments out in front of the courthouse. Well, there were actually 11 commandments, because the commandment, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, and thou shalt not make a graven image. Now, obviously the Catholic Church accepts a graven image, so that they don't translate that verse. But that verse is excluded in their version of the Ten Commandments, where in other Christian traditions, it's there, and in Jewish tradition. So which set of Ten Commandments, because when you read the Bible, they aren't broken out.
Right.
It's a bunch of stuff. Right. It's
right.
a lot of words. So there's that case. There's been a case, I think, that was finally settled. I think it was Oklahoma, where there was a head of the state education wanted to have Bibles in every school. Again, which Bible? Translations make a difference. And why are we teaching? There's teaching high school, maybe college kids, biblical criticism, which is the historical analysis. That's great, but teaching Bible as Bible is wrong. We're still debating. There's schools that want to teach some versions of creationism. That's an issue. That's in there right now. I believe, again, it's Oklahoma. The case is being argued before the Supreme Court April 30th. I know the minister who's involved in it. There is it's called Saint Isidora. It's a Catholic school. Would be a charter online school that'd be state funded. It'd be state funding of religion. This is really significant stuff. So different states, there's a lot of voucher programs. Vouchers are a real issue because they're mostly going to religious schools. It is not open the door. There's the claim that under kids who are sorry.
I'm actually going to make you come back to do a whole vouchers.
Okay,
because I have that control.
She has power now. Now that I'm emeritus, I don't get to make these come back, and I have to.
No, as I was looking at the time, I said we're going to do vouchers in a separate follow-up that maybe for the next time. But I do want to spend 20 or 30 seconds on vouchers, maybe as our last thing, because it is so important how they're misunderstood.
They're misunderstood because they're not people say it's giving choice. It's not giving kids with lower incomes. Typically, people who are getting them are already in school. I think it's 95% of the people who take vouchers are already in private schools. And what schools are doing is, as the voucher reimbursement goes up, the schools are adding to the cost. So it's a transfer of money from public education, which is so important for the American experience, to private schools. There is a case too that AU was involved in. I met the guy. It was a Jewish couple that wanted to adopt a child in, I can't remember what state, and they were denied because it was even though the adoption agency get state money, it was a religious one, and they weren't going to allow a Jewish couple to do it. So you can look that up. So go to bethadam.org, go to our social justice page, and go to Americans United for Separation of Church and State. And there you'll find some of the cases that I quickly referenced.
That was awesome. Do you want to give any one takeaway? All right.
We are having tough times, and the takeaway is we can't give up. It was bad once before. People were willing to fight it. And yes, we may lose the cases, but we can't allow religion to become intertwined with our civic government. It will be bad. Religion and government is not a good combination. It has never been a good combination. We need to keep fighting it.
That's a good takeaway, though, that I mean, if I don't like the military imagery, but we're going to lose a bunch of battles right now. That's
Right.
just where we are right now. And keeping that bigger picture that you have to keep fighting those battles so that in the longer run,
Right.
we win this
Right.
again.
And
this
keep
war again.
America. It's what we're doing is we're trying to keep America what it was and what it intended. Our founders weren't perfect. They were radically revolutionary in an idealistic way when they started. They weren't perfect though, but they had this image and we've kept on working towards it. We can't let that go. America was the first modern country and it allowed us as a Jewish community to thrive in a way we couldn't elsewhere.
Yeah.
I should have said
Yeah.
that goes.
And allows for us to be free in our religion. So it's not a
Absolutely.
war against religion.
No.
It's keeping religion private where it
Right.
belongs.
And frankly, religions have done better in a secular society because we actually had to compete versus had to assume that they were being just underwritten. So, you know, religion, separation of church and state is good for the state. It's good for religion. It's good for those folks who don't, I hate using the word non-belief, but people who find religious identity not to their liking, they are full and equal citizens as well, and they should never feel that they are less than. Nobody should feel less than in America.
It's a perfect way to end this conversation. And I hope you'll come back and talk again soon.
Me talk?
Talk?
Sure.
That's the easiest job I have is to get Rabbi Barr to talk. Right? Thank you so much.
Thanks.
We turn now to thoughts of those we have loved who have died. And we give thanks for the lives they led and the way they touched us, and look to a future where they are a part of us and live on through our thoughts, our memories, and our deeds. In time, disturbances will pass. Difficulties will dissolve. In time, aggravations will be forgotten. Obstacles will be overcome. In time, we will find solutions, even to our most pressing concerns. Mountains move and even disappear. Clouds part, revealing an ever-present sun. In time, moments of desperation will give way to an inner calm, and through others, we will find comfort for our fears. In time, may we find a way to accept life's unending turbulence completely and move gently forward in time. Through all of that turbulence, we hope that the lessons learned and the love shared by those we have cared for will guide us. And we recite our memorial reading. If you are someone familiar with it, feel free from home to join in. Ein bidei hamavet hakoach lakorma shetamun balev. Death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears, in our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared is not lost. With our tears, in our sorrow, we remember. Im dema'ot be'einenu be'et evlenu nishmor al zecher ahuvenu. With our tears, in our sorrow, we remember. Zecher tzadik livracha. May the memory of good people bless our days. With gratitude, we turn to our symbol of joy, our cup of wine. As we lift this cup of wine, tribute to life's enchantments, may we find joy and contentment in our human endeavors. Bruchim hachayim ba'olam, blessed is the life within the world. Bruchim hachayim ba'adam, blessed is the life within us. Because it only comes once a year, and because we're not quite done with it, one more time, our closing song this evening will be Dayenu. It would have been enough for us. And the part that we are singing says, if we had come out of Egypt, it would have been enough. If we had gotten the Sabbath, it would have been enough. If we had gotten the Torah, it would have been enough. In fact, it's only enough when we do with it all that we can to continue to make our lives and the lives of all people richer, more meaningful, and more free. And still we give thanks each step along the way. Dayenu.
Ilu Hotianu mi Mitzrayim, Hotianu mi Mitzrayim, Dayenu, 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 Ilu Natan lanu et Shabbat, Natan lanu et Shabbat, Dayenu, 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 Ilu Natan lanu et Torah, Natan lanu et Torah, Dayenu, 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 Dayenu.
May we know blessings those who are near. May we know blessings those who are far. May the Sabbath bring its goodness to everyone soon, wherever they are. May we know blessings through the day. May we know blessings through the night. May health be for our children. All things soon be right. May we know blessings in our comings. May we know blessings when we depart. May we live each day with peace and wisdom in each heart. Shabbat Shalom. I hope to see you again soon.